Hello, we're back. It is Saturday, 19 November. We're going to keep going down our little timeline here. I'm going to jump over from the Warren reports where I left off yesterday, and then we'll see what we can find here. Now, I found this JFK chronology, which is really good, and it kind of gives you, minute by minute of what happened during the assassination here. So we'll listen to this, and I'll make comments along the way.
Selections from the JFK Assassination Chronology, read by Ira David Wood III. The Carousel Club in Dallas sits across the street from the Hotel Adolphus at 1312.5 Commerce Street, upstairs from a delicatessen. The outdoor walls are covered with provocative photos of scantily clad burlesque dancers, offering a glimpse of what can be viewed inside for a $2 cover charge. 12 a.m., November 22nd, 1963. 9 Secret Service agents drinking at Pat Kirkwood's bar, the Cellar Door, in Fort Worth, Texas. Several of the women serving liquor to the agents are also strippers from Jack Ruby's Carousel Club in Dallas. Bob Schaefer, night police reporter for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, remembers.
Well, the waitresses wore underwear. That was their business attire, as it were, and people sat around on cushions on the floor.
12:50 a.m. JFK arrives at the hotel.
Now, I wanted to say something about the Secret Service there. So, a lot of people, when they first heard this story, they really discounted it, didn't believe it. But then, over the years, especially the last 10, 15 years, we've come across stories about the Secret Service. I believe there was a case like in Colombia or Venezuela, where the Secret Service were hiring prostitutes, on their off hours and were drinking, and some were even, I believe, dismissed because of using drug use. And the thing you have to remember is that the Secret Service, they're not superheroes, they're not superhuman, they're human just like everybody else. They're going to have fallibilities just like everybody else, and there's always going to be a percentage of people in any organization. I don't care how well you train that organization or vet it or do background checks, whatever, there's always going to be a percentage that are going to participate in things like that. And then even just recently, we've had all these thousands of Secret Service text messages and stuff, just disappeared. They were deleted. So the Secret Service, I haven't come to the conclusion if the official Secret Service was involved in the conspiracy to assassinate the president. It wouldn't be the first time that a Praetorian Guard was involved in the assassination of the national leader. If you read through Roman history, it's just, that's just the cost of doing business, I guess. And then there was even a time where the Praetorian Guard was auctioning off the position of Caesar to the highest bidder because they could guarantee the protection. And this is also another reason why a lot of kings in Europe at the time would have foreign mercenaries as their bodyguard protection. That way, the bodyguard protection's existence and continuation to live and livelihood all depended on the king. So if the king was killed, they would most likely be wiped out. So that's why a lot of them would, stake their life to save the king. In this case, we've got a professional organization that I would have to say probably the majority of FBI, Secret Service, government, law enforcement agents, and even military, are 80-90% conservative, probably 75%, Republican. So, and here we have this Democrat, liberal Democrat. So, and there's different levels of participation in a cover-up. You could be a willing participant. That means they're actively working in the Secret Service to undermine the president, bring him into the kill zone to be killed, or you could be an unwilling participant, someone who's maybe being blackmailed, or you could also be an unwilling participant by someone who is told to do things, take orders, but not know that what your actions that you're carrying out, which may seem completely innocent, may lead to the death of the president. And you see this in these videos that show the at Dallas Fort Worth airport, one of the Secret Service agents who's supposed to run alongside the president is being called off. You can see he's even frustrated and confused. He lifts his hands up like, wait, what's going on? And, well, I'm always supposed to be running along beside him. But, there's also the people out there that say that Kennedy was constantly, leaving his Secret Service protection behind, was constantly endangering himself by going into crowds and shaking hands with people, and that, it was a great frustration to try to guard him. And, that could be part of it also, but another thing you would probably want to do is, like this case says about this bar in Fort Worth. They've been staying in Fort Worth the night before. Get a bunch of the agents who were off duty to come by this bar, get them drunk, push them with drinks, stuff like that, keep them up till late in the morning, and then the next day they're not going to be at their peak performance. And you see that as the car travels through the kill zone, the very much almost non-reaction of the Secret Service agents to all the shots. Matter of fact, the driver of the president's limousine even seems to slow down, and then he finally speeds off. Not one agent reacts. They all seem to look back or look around when the shots fire. It's only Jackie's Secret Service agent who rushes forward and jumps into the car. All the other agents seem to just kind of stare around and not react at all. You do see one agent pull a machine gun up, so that is kind of a reaction. So everything that leads to the kill zone, is basically to take away the layers of protection of the president, to bring him into the kill zone, to make it easier for him to be eliminated. One thing I would say about the Secret Service probably not being involved in the assassination is, think about it. If the driver Greer and the other driver, or the other passenger on the right, were involved, do you really think that they would sit there in front of the president while someone's firing behind them, or volunteer to drive the car knowing that someone's going to be firing at the president from behind them? You're most surely probably going to get hit, if not by one of the bullets, by shrapnel, because you're in a moving car, so the gun's going to be constantly being adjusted. That's one case that at least those two Secret Service agents probably weren't not involved. Or maybe they just, were hoping the guys were good shots. But if you're a professional, and you know about a circumstance like that, and even if you hate the president with all your passion, you're most likely not going to be involved in the assassination, because if you were, you wouldn't be in that situation. You wouldn't be in that position there. It could be that other agents were involved. A lot of people say no, it's either all of them or none. That's not always the case. Think about it in any kind of job situation you're in. Do you really know the religion, the political preferences, how someone voted in any, in all the people in your organization, in your call center or job place that you work? No, you don't. You don't, because people have privacy. And that's the same circumstances. I've been in many situations where on one level something was happening in the company that I didn't know about, but I was still working in the company doing something completely different unrelated to that situation. And this could be the case for the other Secret Service agents. And there was also two other things about Secret Service agents. That one, a motorcycle cop rode his motorcycle up to the stairs of the grassy knoll, ran up the stairs back to the back of the fence, and when he came around the fence where supposedly the grassy knoll shooter would have been, there was a man in a suit flashing Secret Service credentials. So he just waved him on and moved on. And, the Secret Service says there was no agents in that area, only in the convoy. There was also another report about a Secret Service agent that was reported killed, along with Officer Tippett and Kennedy, in the first news reports, or at least a Secret Service agent that was shot. And somehow that all proved false, or maybe it was true, and then they covered it up somehow. Who knows? But anyway, that's all I have to say about the Secret Service there, and we'll move on, and I'll stop jabbering there.
Hotel Texas in Fort Worth. 2 a.m. Secret Service agents are still drinking at the cellar door. 2:15 a.m. Mary Lawrence, head waitress at the Lucas B&B restaurant, 2 doors down from the Vegas Club, says she's positive that Lee Harvey Oswald enters the restaurant and tells her and the night cashier that he is waiting for Jack Ruby.
No, thank you. I'm just waiting for Mr. Ruby.
When Ruby enters the restaurant, the 2 men sit together and talk for over a half an hour and then leave. A week and a half after the assassination, Mary will receive a phone call from an unknown man who says,
"If you don't want to die, you better get out of town."
Now, this story, I find it almost impossible, because Oswald couldn't drive. There was no bus service at 2, 3 in the morning. Maybe he took a cab. Obviously, if he had left the house, because remember he rode home with Frazier on that Thursday night. Usually he rode down on a Friday, but this time he rode with Frazier. So Frazier specifically remembers taking him home after work. If he had left at 3 or something in the morning, 2 or 3 in the morning, and taken a taxi back to downtown Dallas to meet with Ruby, surely his wife, maybe even Mrs. Payne, would have noticed him leaving, or at least coming back that early in the morning. And I find it, highly unlikely. I'm not going to say, as I go through this evidence and these things, that this absolutely happened, this absolutely didn't happen. It's impossible to say stuff like that, because I wasn't there, I didn't see what happened. So, but I'd say the probability most likely is that didn't occur. Oswald did oversleep past his usual 7 o'clock, but that gives him 4 hours to sleep or so. If you're gonna shoot the President of the United States, you're gonna want to have a good night's sleep, okay, so you can be focused to fire and shoot at the president. Also, you're gonna need your energy to escape any kind of law enforcement, chasing after you. So I find this story highly unlikely.
3:30 a.m. The Secret Service men at the cellar door are joking about how several firemen are the only ones left guarding the President of the United States at the Hotel Texas in Fort Worth. 5 a.m. One Secret Service agent is still drinking at the cellar door. All agents have to report for duty at 8 a.m. on the morning of the 22nd, 3 hours from now. Bob Schaefer remembers.
Well, while there, we were joined by some Secret Service agents from Kennedy's detail. They were off duty, but they wanted to go. They weren't drinking, but we managed to see the dawn come up and see the sunrise in Fort Worth before we left that place.
Lee Harvey Oswald has been awake most of the night, not able to sleep, finally dozing off about this time. Marina avoided him last night, soaking in a bathtub for an hour before coming to bed. This morning, Sergeant Robert Vinson takes a bus to Andrews Air Force Base near Washington, planning to hitch a ride home on the first available flight, going to Colorado Springs or its vicinity. He's eventually told that he can leave on a C-54, which is said to depart for Lowry Air Force Base in Denver. Vinson boards the plane, which he finds empty, and waits. The plane is unlike all the other planes Vinson has hitched a ride on. This C-54 bears no military markings or serial numbers. Its only identification is on its tail, a rust-brown graphic of an egg-shaped Earth crossed by white grid marks. After a few minutes, two men board the plane and walk past Vinson without saying a word. The men enter the cockpit, close the door, the engines rev up, and the plane takes off.
Mr. President?
JFK's valet, George Thomas, awakens the president, who is asleep in Suite 850 of the Hotel Texas in Fort Worth. 7:08 a.m. Dallas Police Chief Jesse Curry appears on local television and announces that the president will be in Dallas today and that Dallas wants no incidents. Curry concludes by asking all good citizens to please report to the Dallas Police Department anyone who has voiced violent opinion against the President of the United States or who has boasted publicly or privately of plans to demonstrate today. 7:10 a.m. Lee Harvey Oswald is still asleep 10 minutes after his alarm goes off. Marina wakes him. He rushes to dress in order to leave for work at this time. He tells his wife that she should buy new shoes for baby June. While showering this morning, JFK takes off his St. Jude and St. Christopher medals and leaves them hanging on the shower head. When later sweeping the room, Secret Service agent Ron Pontius finds the medals and puts them in his pocket, with intentions of returning them to JFK after the Dallas motorcade. Pontius eventually gives the medals to Marty Underwood, who at last report still retains them. As JFK dresses this morning in Fort Worth, Texas, he dons his underwear and a surgical corset. He laces it tightly, then pulls a long elastic bandage over his feet and twists it so that it forms a figure 8. He then slips it up over both legs. Finally, it is adjusted over his hips where it supports the bottom of his torso, while the back brace holds the lower spine rigid.
Just a little off comment here. There's these numerous reports about all these women, supposedly JFK had as lovers between Exeter and Marilyn Monroe and all these other women. The problem I have with that is that JFK was injured in World War II, okay? And, he messed up his back in World War II. Matter of fact, I think he was even in a plane crash where he had to get some kind of back surgery about 10 years before. And so because of that, he had to wear a brace, a back brace, a corset to hold himself up. And another thing too is they looked at medical records of JFK, and he was under so many drugs that today you would probably be incapacitate most people, that would take them. They were basically pain relievers. They didn't know all the side effects and everything like we know today, but his medical doctor was prescribing him massive amounts of pain relievers. So to think that and also being in the White House, everyone's going to know if some female is coming into the White House. Most likely Jackie's going to know that, there's another female coming into the White House. The Secret Service is definitely going to know. It's going to be on the Secret Service logs. I mean, maybe JFK, was sneaking across the street to a hotel or something with all the Secret Service in tow. Who knows? But I just find it almost impossible to believe that JFK had these numerous girlfriends. You also have to remember that I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it was something like 6 or 7 children that JFK and Jackie had. Okay, so you've got 6 or 7 children running around looking for daddy and going between daddy and mommy. And so it'd be very, very difficult to get away from that because the children are isolated. They're stuck in the White House. They can't go anywhere outside the ground, so they're going to be looking for mommy or daddy. So I find it almost impossible to believe that JFK, was having affairs with women. Now, he did have his affairs with these women before he met Jackie, And don't you think that Jackie would know about these things and, would confront him about these things? I don't know. I'm sure, back in those days, my understanding is that men had, a wife and then a couple of girlfriends on the side, but the reports that, he had, 6, 7 girlfriends, just almost impossible to believe. I mean, and that he slept with Marilyn Monroe. I mean, Marilyn Monroe is this actress way over in Hollywood, and he's in Washington, D.C. How are they going to get together? Because if Jackie leaves the White House and goes, like, one of these trips supposedly took place in Las Vegas, well, his wife is going to be with him. If Kennedy, his wife's going to be with him. And she's not going to have much to do in Las Vegas except hang out with him. And matter of fact, Kennedy knew that Jackie was a great PR for him in the news media. So he was always wanting to have Jackie at his elbow. Okay? And do you think that you would want to piss off your number one PR asset, besides being your wife, but your number one PR asset by screwing around? Is she going to be out there with him? No. She's going to be like, Melania Trump, knocking away Trump's hand, like that. So I just find these stories almost laughable. Maybe he had one girlfriend, maybe 2 girlfriends, maybe like a fling here and there, but I just think it's logistically almost impossible, especially considering that is the way his health was. I mean, think about it. The act of sex, you're going to have to take off this corset. Well, think about it. You're going to have to find some way to meet these women. Then they're going to have to, without the wife being around, and then you're going to have to arrange some kind of place where you can get together with these women with Secret Service in tow, okay? And then you got wife and children in tow running around the White House, okay? And then you've got the physical problem of, you're in constant pain from your injuries. You're taking all this medication that's definitely going to affect your performance. And then you've got an injured back. They had back surgery. You can barely stand, okay? And you have to wear this corset just to be able to stand up straight and not fall down, okay? So I just find it almost laughable that these stories come out about John Kennedy and his 12, 15 girlfriends or so. Just craziness.
7:15 a.m., November 22nd, 1963. Lee Harvey Oswald leaves his home to go to work at the Texas Book Depository building. Marina says he leaves his wedding ring and, by some reports, his wallet on the bedroom dresser. The Dallas police will later claim they find the wallet on Oswald following the assassination. There is no indication that he used 2 wallets.
So I wanted to say something about that too. So if you think about it, the Warren Commission tries to paint that he left his ring and he left his wallet, that it was sort of okay, I'm not coming back, I'm going to assassinate the president, I'll probably get killed and all this kind of crap. And, this is what they're saying the reason, and then leaving all that money too. Well, the reason why he was living apart from his wife is because they were having marital problems. She left him and came back with Ruth Payne back to Dallas, okay? He followed her back to Dallas, okay? He had been trying to get back together with her, okay? She was living separately from him with the children. He was trying to get back together with her, and she didn't want to have anything to do with him. He'd been unstable, violent, couldn't hold a job, was violent toward her. All these factors, went through her mind. The only problem from her is that, she knew that she couldn't stay in the U.S. without him. Okay? So she wasn't pushing him off completely. This is why she allowed him to come over on the weekends. But she was trying to isolate him, to keep, the violence at bay and things like that. Mrs. Payne said she never saw him violent around her, but he was probably trying to be on his best behavior. Because remember, Oswald had only been back in Dallas about a month and a half before the assassination. So it wasn't very much time there. So I think what was going on is that, Marina was still rejecting him. But she didn't completely reject him because she knew she couldn't stay in the United States without him. She had been writing to the Russian embassy since around I believe, February, March of 1963 about returning back to the Soviet Union. So it was already going through her mind to go back to the Soviet Union. But another strange thing is there's a letter of her writing to the Soviet embassy in Washington about getting visas for her and Lee to go back to the Soviet Union. So they were either going to go, together or just her. So I think what was happening is that, he left the money so she could take care, tells her to buy shoes, buy groceries, buy the children an outfit. His wife's pregnant. She's just about to have another baby, okay? They already have one child. She has the baby, I believe, in 2-3 weeks later. So I think what's happening there, he's trying to get back together with his wife. She's still indecisive on what she wants to do. So he leaves his wedding ring, he leaves his wallet, he leaves his money, and, that's kind of here, I'll leave it in your hands. If you want me to be with you, then I'll come back next weekend and we'll get all that back. Very interesting. The thing is, though, Marina testifies that he left his wallet with her, but the police testified also, the arresting officers, that they found a wallet on him when he was arrested. Okay, so he left the wallet that morning, but when the police arrested him, 6 hours later, they found a wallet on him. There's also a news report, there was a wallet with, Lee's ID in it that was found at the Tippit shooting scene. So we got 3 wallets there. There was also an inventory taken by the Warren Commission of the possessions of Lee Oswald inside Mrs. Payne's garage, and they found 2 other wallets. I mean, I don't know about you, but how many men out there that have 5 wallets, at least 3 of them with ID telling your name? I mean, think about that. Very interesting. But anyway, that's what I wanted to say on that topic.
He does leave home wearing his U.S. Marine Corps signet ring and an identification bracelet with the name Lee inscribed on it. He will be wearing both of these items at the time of his arrest. Dallas police detectives who will later search Ruth Payne's home do not list a wedding ring or any kind of ring on their inventory sheets. A wedding ring was not photographed with other items of evidence on the floor of the Dallas police station, nor was it listed on the joint Dallas Police FBI inventory of November 26, 1963. Lee Harvey Oswald walks 1 block east from the Payne house and pokes his head into the back door of Lennie Mae Randall's home, looking for her brother Buell Frazier for a ride to work. Both Randall and Frazier will later agree that they observed Lee Harvey Oswald place a package in the back seat. Both are adamant that the package is far too small to be even a broken-down Mannlicher Carcana rifle. Mrs. Essie Mae Williams, Lennie Mae Randall's mother, will tell the FBI that Lee Harvey Oswald was not carrying a brown bag or anything else in his hands. 7:23 a.m.
All right, so there's something I want to say about that. So the brown package that Lee Oswald was witnessed by two witnesses, Buell Frazier and his sister, carrying was about, I believe he says, 2.5 feet long. And when you break down the rifle, it's about 3.5 feet long. Okay, when you take the barrel off, the stock is at least 3 feet long. So it couldn't have had the stock in there, in with the rifle parts inside the bag there. So what was he carrying? He told Buell Frazier he was carrying curtain rods, but when you go back to his room, it already had curtains in the room there. So he was obviously carrying something, or was he carrying something? Who knows? They found the brown paper bag on the 6th floor, but could not find Oswald's fingerprints on the packaging whatsoever. Now, if you think about it, you put this package together, you put a rifle inside, you sealed it up, you carried it over to Wesley Frazier's truck, you put it in the back seat, then you pick it up again, you carry it inside, and then you take it to the 6th floor and you hide it up there. No one else inside the Texas School Book Depository saw Oswald with this package. Only Buell Frazier did, and his sister. So, how can you carry a rifle, a 3-foot-long rifle, in a brown package into a building with 40, 50 people and no one see you carry it? Okay, if you get on the elevator, people may get on the elevator with you and see you with it. If you go up the stairs, people may be coming down or up the stairs and see you with it. Not one person saw him with the package. So either Buell Frazier was lying about the package, or Oswald was just really good at covering the package or something like that. Who knows? Oswald did have a jacket, so maybe he hid it inside the jacket going up the stairs. I'm not sure. This is, like I said, there are things that Oswald does that makes him seem guilty, and then there are other things he does that make him seem not guilty. And what I mean by that is, if you're not involved in shooting the president, why do you come home on a Thursday instead of a Friday like you usually do? You come home the day before the president comes to town, okay? If you're not involved in the assassination, why do you carry a brown paper bag that's found on the 6th floor near the sniper's nest? If you're not involved in the assassination, why do you make up the story about curtain rods when you obviously don't need curtain rods according to his landlord? So those are things that make him look guilty. The other things that don't make him look guilty is, there's no fingerprints left on the bag. Okay? You're running late. You oversleep. This is your one moment to shine in history, to kill the President of the United States and become infamous, but you oversleep? Okay, that I don't buy that. If you've been planning this for a while, how do you oversleep? Okay? One thing that does make him look guilty, is leaving the money in his wedding ring. But like I said, there could be an innocent reasoning for that. So Oswald, like I've said, is a mixed bag. I still have no clear, and probably still won't have any clear definition of what I think about Oswald. And basically, I'm going to get into it, but basically I break it down. There's about 4 different Oswalds. because he acts in 4 completely different ways, which I'll go into later what I mean by that. But, he's just a very confusing person here. All right, so we're going to keep going and keep going from there. I am going to say one last thing, though. Again, like I said yesterday, if you planned well enough to bring a packaging, make a bag to hold the rifle, okay, and construct this bag to hold the rifle, why didn't you bring your revolver with you? Because after you shoot the president, everyone's going to converge on that building, and you're most likely going to have to shoot your way out with the pistol. You're not going to be firing with that rifle as you go click, 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 click. It's going to be almost impossible to shoot your way out with the rifle. So why do you not take your revolver with you? And another thing that points to him not being guilty is, okay, so you realize the president's got shot, so what do? You immediately go home, grab your revolver, and head out the door to the Texas Theater. That tells me he's not guilty, because that tells me that, something went wrong. Kennedy got shot no matter what his warnings were, and then he realized something was wrong and that he may be, implicated. So therefore, you take the gun as protection against these other people, Ruby, Tippett, the Dallas gang there that's involved in this assassination that you stumbled across or infiltrated. And this is to protect you from them. Okay? Anyway, so that's those things there. So we'll get right back into the timeline and we'll just keep going.
Lee Harvey Oswald is driven to work by Buell Wesley Frazier. They don't talk very much during the trip. When asked what the package in the back seat is, Frazier testifies that Lee Harvey Oswald answers,
"Curtain rods."
This is the package in which Lee Harvey Oswald supposedly carries the broken-down assassination rifle. This bag is carried between his armpit and cupped hand into the Texas School Book Depository. No one sees it come into the building. The rifle, broken down, cannot fit under Lee Harvey Oswald's armpit and cupped hand, as Frazier testifies he carries it. The bag is homemade, out of brown wrapping paper supposedly taken from the Texas School Book Depository. The Warren Commission does not indicate its reasoning as to when and where Oswald fashioned the paper bag from materials taken from the Texas School Book Depository. Presumably, he did so only after the motorcade route became known on Tuesday, November 19, 1963, and before departing for Irving after work on Thursday. According to the Commission's findings, Oswald must have carried the paper bag concealed on his person when he accompanied Frazier to Irving on Thursday. But Frazier saw no paper bag or any sign that Oswald had concealed on his person the 6-foot length of wrapping paper necessary to construct a bag consisting of 2 sheets, each about 3 feet long, sealed at the edges. Lee Harvey Oswald's fingerprints will not be found on the brown paper bag.
Okay, I wanted to say something about that if I can remember all that. So, again, no fingerprints found on the paper bag. Now, this bag was sealed together with a sticky type of glue, okay? This glue would have sprayed onto the bag, and there's no way you can get your fingerprints off of that, if you think about it. So it's just, Frazier saw Oswald put the bag in the back seat. He saw him carry it. That means he was grabbing it with his hands. Oswald wasn't wearing gloves. So how did this paper that was found on the on the 6th floor not have Oswald's fingerprints on them? But it's just almost an impossible task. You can't, wipe off fingerprints from a paper bag like that. It's just nearly impossible because The fingers have oil. The oil soaks into the paper, and it leaves, the dermal ridges imprint onto the paper. So it's very, very difficult to get off. It's not like getting off fingerprints from plastic or linoleum or metal. It's very difficult to get off fingerprints from the paper bag there. So, anyway, hold on one second. Okay, so I wanted to say something about how lucky Oswald is, okay? And if you think about it, you just got back from Mexico City, supposedly, or New Orleans. You come back in early October, and the lady, this is how he got the job at the Texas School Book Depository, is that he was looking for a job. The lady where his wife is staying, Mrs. Ruth Payne, knows someone, a neighbor, whose brother just came to town just 2 months before in September, Buell Wesley Frazier, and he got a job at the School Book Depository. And so Mrs. Payne asked if, asked that Buell Frazier's sister about a number for the job. She even called to see if they were still hiring, told Lee about it, and drove him to the appointment to interview for the job, and he was hired that day and started work the next day. Okay? And just think about how lucky you must be to be Oswald. You're this world revolutionary Marxist wanting to stamp out capitalism and, put a death blow to imperialistic America by killing the president. And how lucky you strike gold. How you just happen to get a job in the building that's high up, where you can shoot the president of the United States, the enemy of Marxism and revolutions around the world. You can shoot the president easily from this building. Think about how lucky you must be. It's not like Oswald had a job someplace, found out the president was coming, looked around for a building to fire from, and picked the School Book Depository, and was lucky enough to get in there with a rifle with no one seeing him, get to the 6th floor with no one seeing him, because everyone just happened to be at lunch when the president came into the kill zone. Just conveniently happened to be lunchtime, okay? Think about how lucky you must be. The gods of the revolution must be with you. And another thing I want to talk about with Oswald is, he's got to be either completely insane or a complete genius. Think about it. He once, according to the Warren Commission, wants to be famous. He's dissatisfied with his life in Russia, dissatisfied with his life in the U.S., so he wants to leave a mark in history by doing something to make him famous or infamous, by killing the President of the United States. But they also don't mention the fact that, how do you jive up trying to assassinate General Walker, who's to the right, very, very right-wing Nazi almost, who was fired by President Kennedy himself, and they even put him in a mental institution for a while. Wouldn't that make Kennedy a hero to this left-leaning Marxist radical revolutionary, that he punished his enemy, Walker, who's this right-wing Nazi, who's on the opposite side of where Oswald is at? Why would you shoot the one person who got him out of the military and put him in a mental institution? That would be like killing someone who killed Hitler. It'd be like killing the assassin of Hitler. Doesn't make much sense. Okay? So, also Kennedy, one of the reasons why he was being, hated by the military and the right wing and the Klan and the mafia and the right wing Cubans, is because he was trying to lower the tensions with Cuba. They even had basically suppressed all their efforts to try to kill Castro by these right wing groups, by arresting them, shutting down their training camps. And if Oswald was this pro-Marxist, pro-Castro revolutionary, why would he try to kill the one person that was trying to suppress all the other people, trying to kill Castro, trying to, destroy communism, try to destroy Marxism? The one person that was trying to, ease up the tensions on Castro, call off the dogs on Castro, he's going to assassinate? Doesn't make much sense. At least it doesn't to me. And again, think about how lucky you are. You want to be infamous? You want to kill the President of the United States? You just happen to get a job in a building that just happens to be owned by a very right-wing, ultranationalist D.H. Byrd, who happens to own that building. And they put you in that building, and you're working on the 6th floor. I mean, as far as Oswald knew, when he got that job, there could have been another company on the 6th, 7th floor, 5th floor, and he would have had no access to that. Just think about how lucky you must be. You're the luckiest man in the world. You're a Marxist in right-wing, ultra-conservative Dallas, Texas. Like I said yesterday, it's like being a neo-Nazi in the Soviet Union, Moscow. How probable is that? Think of the probability of that happening. So this is Oswald and his circumstances. And the thing is interesting about Oswald, when you read the statements, and we're going to go through them, of his co-workers, he's silent or barely says anything. He's writing at least once a week, twice a week, once home to Irving on Friday and once to work on Monday with Buell Wesley Frazier, and he doesn't say anything. You'd think that if he was this revolutionary, power to the people, he'd be trying to recruit Buell Wesley Frazier. The capitalists are like this, and communism's better, and I lived in the Soviet Union, and I've seen it, and da-da-da-da-da. You think he'd be advocating like that? You're going to go as far enough to kill the president. Wouldn't you think he'd be advocating before then? Think about all these people who've committed all these political assassinations and crimes. They always advocated. The guy that just attacked Pelosi's husband was advocating for years on social media before he committed his crimes. The guy who sent all the pipe bombs from Florida that was living in his van was advocating all this stuff long before he committed his crimes. So where is Oswald, this fervent Marxist revolutionary, advocating? Because it's one thing to believe something. It's another thing to talk about it with other people, what you believe. It's even a further thing to advocate it and try to recruit others to your position. Okay? And then it's even further to get to the point where you commit violence to carry out what you're advocating. Those are like 5 or 6 steps right there that most people go through but stop before they get to the violent part. Okay? Think about it. That's the way it is with most people. But yet, Oswald's not trying to recruit his landlady to be a Marxist, and talk about the will of the people and, the revolution. He's not advocating at work to his fellow co-workers. Nobody has no idea that Oswald even lived in the Soviet Union. Okay? So think about that. Isn't that very strange? To go from nobody knows anything about him living in the Soviet Union, nobody knows he's a Marxist, living in this ultra-conservative, right-wing town, to skipping past advocating to assassination. And then what does he do when he gets caught? Does he advocate? Usually most people who advocated and then committed violence says, hey, yeah, I killed that son of a bitch Kennedy because he tried to kill Castro, and, Castro's a good guy, and, Kennedy's just being handled and ruled by the military establishment and sucks up to them and kowtows to them, and so I put it into it, and I killed that son of a bitch. That two-faced son of a bitch. That's what most people would have done. If you got to the point where you're advocating and then you're committing violence, political violence, and then you got your spotlight, you have 20, 30 news reporters from all over the world in a news conference with the police have you shackled right there before the world, that's your moment. But what does Oswald do? I haven't committed any acts of violence. I don't know what's going on here. I'm just a patsy. Not, yeah, I shot that motherfucker Kennedy and he deserved it. I would have shot him 10 more times if I'd been able to get an automatic rifle. He doesn't say anything like that. That's his moment in the spotlight. That's the Warren Commission's case. That Oswald was a revolutionary that was dissatisfied with life in the United States and advocated for communism and Marxism and took it to the next extreme, which was violent revolution and assassination. And when he did his deed, he peters out. He doesn't advocate anything. Doesn't that kind of break your case? Members of the jury, my client was jealous that his wife was having an affair, and that's why he went and shot her lover 10 times, and then was standing there with the pistol when the police arrived and didn't try to run. Oswald tried to run because he knew he wasn't guilty. He knew he didn't do anything. He knew he was being set up. That's why he was hiding in the Texas the Texas theater. And when the police came, he said, "Oh, they're going to kill me, so I might as well shoot back." You have to look at the motivations of people and why they do the things they do. And then when they throw Oswald in front of the camera, he doesn't advocate communism and the revolution, and this is why I shot Kennedy. No, he doesn't. That's your moment. That's their case. That's the Warren Commission's case. That his motivation for killing Kennedy was because Kennedy was going after Castro and harming Cuba and harming Marxism and taking on the Soviet Union. And that's their case. And it falls apart because he doesn't do what they say. And matter of fact, we're going to come across testimony later where he's sitting in the hot seat inside the police station. He's surrounded by police. They're interviewing him. He's not shaking. He's not panicky. He's not railing against capitalism. Okay. And he says something really, really smart, which goes against him killing Kennedy. Okay? because Kennedy's this northeastern liberal. The vice president is Johnson, a Texas conservative. And everybody knows that if the president is killed or died, the vice president automatically becomes president. And so, when they ask him, did you kill Kennedy? He doesn't answer the question. He says, in this country, he talks about the president and the vice president, and if the president's killed, the vice president would take over, and that the vice president's position on Cuba and Russia was much further to the right than Kennedy's. So, if you kill Kennedy, you actually make things worse, because now you've got someone who's even more conservative, even more to the right, gonna be more active in going after communism, which is exactly what Johnson did. He invaded Vietnam and expanded the war there. So you've actually gone from the frying pan to the fire by assassinating John Kennedy. So it doesn't make any sense if your case is, like the Warren Commission says, he's this violent revolutionary trying to kill Kennedy to gain fame, to get his message out there because he's dissatisfied with capitalist America, and then he says nothing to the news media, but to the police he tells them, hey, when they ask him, hey, why did you kill Kennedy? And he says, well, it's my understanding that if the president is eliminated, then the vice president would take over. And the vice president's policies are much further to the right than Kennedy's. And he leaves it at that. So that's telling them that, hey, I didn't do it because why would I kill Kennedy? Because we'd end up with worse. We'd end up with Johnson. And that's exactly what happened. By Oswald killing Kennedy, if he's doing what the Warren Commission is advocating, would make things worse for Oswald's position. So anyway, there we go. We're going to keep going on this. I'm sorry I'm preaching, but as these things come along, I just make connections that, hey, it doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying that Oswald's completely innocent, that he may have had a role or he may not have had a role, or may have been set up. But if he is what the Warren Commission is completely trying to paint him as, an ardent Marxist, communist, hardcore revolutionary, killing Kennedy would be the last thing he would do. Because he's obviously aware of what Johnson's political positions are. He grew up in Texas. He grew up in New Orleans. He knows Johnson. He knows what Johnson is like. He even tells the police. So why would he kill Kennedy and make things worse for the communists and for Russia and for Cuba? Anyway, on that note, I'm going to stop and we'll pick it up next time. Take care.